of you to Los Angeles Magazine's latest breakfast conversation held here at the gorgeous Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. So right off the bat, I want to thank the Roosevelt and the public. This is such a beautiful room. If you're ever really thinking of or looking for a revitalization story in Los Angeles, the Roosevelt is such a prime example of that. I went to high school catty corner from here at Hollywood High.
Oh, you're
and
a chic.
I am a chic.
Wow.
Yeah, watch out.
I know, seriously.
And we do, well, I'll save that for a highlight reel later in life, but sneak into the pool, and it was, you know, a pretty rundown, still classic, but rundown hotel. And it's been absolutely central to the revitalization of this district. I would think you would probably agree. So what a wonderful place to have this today. I am the substitute host today. My name's Mary Melton. I'm the editor of the magazine, and I invited you all here. I hadn't planned on actually hosting this Q&A, but I'm delighted to do so. Because unfortunately, Giselle Fernandez had a bit of a medical emergency yesterday that took her out of being able to do this today. She will be fine. She deeply, deeply regrets not being here. She considers you, her quote was, a compadre.
Yes.
And friend. So I'm really sorry that she's not here, and we miss her. So I hope I'm a fair substitute.
Okay, great.
But thank you for being here. Eric and I have Mayor Garcetti and I have many things in common, including being native Angelinos. And for those of you who don't know, the very quick bio here, if you would ever like to visit his birthplace, it would actually be fairly easy to do so without leaving much of a carbon footprint from right here. You could take the red line over to the 7th Street Metro Station and then walk about 10 minutes to Good Sam, and where you were born 42 years ago?
43.
43 years ago, sorry. That was recent.
It's going quickly.
Yeah, it's going really fast. And he grew up in the Valley and attended school there and went to Columbia University, was a Rhodes Scholar. If I didn't know this about you, you wrote a musical in you were part of the famous variety show
Varsity
there,
show.
or the varsity show there.
Yeah.
And you wrote a musical, I guess in the vein of Rodgers and Hammerstein, who I think also did the shows there.
That's what I meant.
Where highlights included scenes from the 92 riots and the 94 Northridge earthquake.
Yes.
I can't imagine a lot of really lively numbers
they're great.
in that
They're great.
musical. Is there a revival of that happening?
There's no revival of it, but the guy who I co-wrote with, once he got rid of me as the composer, lyricist, and found a better composer, he won the Tony, kind of out of nowhere, and the Pulitzer for Next to Normal, if you saw that musical recently, Brian Yorkie, and it's still a dear friend, and he promised me I can write one song in his next musical, so we'll see.
That's a nice success story. When Eric was back, in LA and went into politics, he was originally, a councilman for the 13th district. And I remember quite clearly, I was at an event for you. I lived in that district at the time, and you held an event at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And I remember saying to my husband, there's something clearly different about this candidate. Because I had never, and Jackie Goldberg, obviously a beloved, council person for that district, but I felt even then, and that was 14 years ago, that you had figured out how to click in with the changing, evolving neighborhood around you in a way that, knowing that being at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery wasn't ironic. This was actually a really cool public space that had grown up there. So I kind of knew that this was going to be an exciting politician to watch. And I think that same fervor and way to, I guess technically we're both too old to be part of the millennial generation, but to actually appeal to them and to figure out how to harness the energy of that generation with the dedication and concerns of our parents' generation, of how to do that as a candidate is something that is, I'm sure, part of the success story of why you're currently in office. But Mayor Garcetti was the city council president for many of the 8 years that you were in the council, and then of course came aboard as mayor in July of last year. So welcome. Thank you for being part of the series.
I've been in the audience many times, so it's strange to be up here, but thank you guys for coming out early this morning.
I know that you're rather busy, so I appreciate you fitting this into your schedule. Let's keep, I hope the whole conversation will be topical, and the way this works for those of you who haven't been here, don't be shy about eating. It is called a breakfast conversation, so eat. Please feel free at the end of the conversation. We're going to have an open session for some questions.
Just don't call him Richard Katz. You know, he always tries to throw me off.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna. Let's be really, really topical.
Sure.
Where were you yesterday morning around 6:25 a.m.?
I have to confess, I was in my bed. My wife is from a foreign country called Indiana, so she's not as used to these earthquakes. And I got up, I said, earthquake, very calmly, not quite the Chris Schabel, you know, duck under the desk scenario. And about 10 minutes later, we both turned to each other and we said, should we have thought about our daughter who was down the hallway? But kind of quickly we figured out it was not a big earthquake. I got on the phone immediately with Dr. Lucy Jones, who some of you may know is kind of Earthquake Lucy. The United States Geological Survey has loaned her to the city for a year in an kind of unprecedented, they're paying her salary, but 4 days a week she's at City Hall in my office. And I've tasked her with coming up with a plan to strengthen our buildings, our communications infrastructure, and our water supply. And if you haven't thought about earthquakes in a while, I hope yesterday was a good wake-up call literally for you, because you know, earthquake preparedness, somebody asked me, are we prepared for an earthquake? And I said, we're as prepared as any big city in America for a disaster, which is to say we're wholly unprepared. And each one of us, you know, remember, we live a digital life, and you're going to have an analog day when a big earthquake hits. Internet down, cell phones not working, water cut off potentially for up to 6 months because of the aqueducts that come through. Our natural gas lines, I mean, a whole bunch of things are going to happen. So going over with your family and with your work colleagues what that plan is going to be for that day when it comes is really critical. But Lucy told me it was a new fault line that they didn't know about. It was about 5 miles below the mountains in somewhere between Encino and Westwood. And she said there should be no damage other than maybe a vase or two popping off the shelf if you're right near the epicenter. But I called and made sure that we didn't have any DWP damage, no police fire stuff, and we deployed our firefighters into the community to start looking at critical infrastructure and make sure it was okay.
Well, what about that critical infrastructure? Do you feel you were here during the 94 earthquake?
No, I missed the 94 earthquake by a day, and I missed the riots by a day. My parents said, stop leaving LA because bad things keep happening. But I was a student in both cases, and I watched the riots from a dorm room in New York City, and I watched the earthquake in England when I was a graduate student there. So I missed both of those experiences.
Well, San Francisco is in the midst of a very serious and thorough earthquake retrofit, you know, right now. Do you feel like we're anywhere where we should be in terms of the retrofitting of those recommendations that came out of the 94 quake?
Yes, in some cases, and absolutely not in others. We did change a lot of things with the building code after 71, after the Sylmar earthquake, and after 94. So including some of the stuff that San Francisco is looking at. You know, we changed the building code, though. There's really two types of buildings. Those soft first-story buildings that are kind of apartment complexes for the most part that can collapse, which we haven't, which is what San Francisco focused on. San Francisco hasn't, and we haven't looked at the older concrete buildings that have a certain type of reinforcement that you'll see some here in Hollywood, some downtown and throughout the Southland. Those ones, some of them are going to be very strong and some of them are very vulnerable. And we're absolutely not where we need to be, which is why I asked Dr. Jones to come online. And we haven't done enough planning on both the water infrastructure and communications infrastructure. So those three things, building, water, communications, is really what the focus will be this year. She's talking to stakeholders. There's a lot of things that's, you know, if you're a building owner and suddenly you're told that this is a building that's going to come down, or you're under a fault line, suddenly your value could go to zero. So there's pretty big things, but I won't accept that it's going to cost a lot or that some folks might lose their value as an excuse not to do something. We absolutely have to confront this, and whatever life we save, whatever property we save is well worth the time that we're going to put into it this year.
Mm-hmm. Is it one of those issues that, one of the first things I wanted to ask you, what are the issues that keep you up at night now as the mayor? You know, and you wake up in the morning and you're like, damn, I'm the mayor.
I do have those moments basically every day where if I think too hard, I think my head will explode. But I sleep well, but I certainly, when I leave town, think about earthquakes. Mm-hmm. You know, it hit me. You know, part of my job is to travel, to go to Washington, D.C. I just came back from 4 days in Mexico where we had a very successful trade mission. But those moments when I leave, I'm like, is this when something bad is going to happen? When I went to Washington, D.C., my second month in, on a big lobbying trip, that's when Trayvon Martin trial had its verdict, and suddenly people were on the 10 freeway. And I was 2 hours or 3 hours from the nearest airport, and had to drive, catch a plane with a minute to spare. to come back here, knowing that when I came back, probably nothing would happen, but if I didn't come back, the city could, explode. And that's part of the tension you have as mayor, is how are you going to allocate that time, how are you going to be a good national and international salesperson and representative for your city, but most of the people want you here with your head down. I think the other thing that keeps me up is whether the success of LA, which I feel that we have. I'm not mayor of a town that's buried under snow or landlocked or doesn't have a great port or airport or a diverse population that's not hardworking. I'm the mayor of LA, so we have all these assets in spades. But what I worry about, doesn't keep me up, but I worry about whether we can put the pieces together. We're not a city that's declining in population. We're not a city that's not producing jobs, including high-wage jobs. We're not a place that's not creative, creativity coming out our ears. What we have, though, is the risk, whether it's looking at people who are documented and undocumented, rich and poor, of living these parallel worlds. Even politically. I mean, I just convened for the second time the mayors of LA County. That had never been done before by an LA mayor. But there's 87 peers that I have. They love to hate LA because we're the 800-pound gorilla that never listens. But if we do a better job listening, I also then want to lead. Because when I'm down in Mexico, and let's say one of our successes was Panda Express is going to be opening up 266 restaurants there. They're not based in my city, but they're going to manufacture the food for Mexico from LA. And I'm sure folks who live in my city will, today work there and will be working there. So it's an expansion of local jobs. But I kind of have to lead the region, but I have to earn that leadership position. So I worry about whether we'll put these pieces together of realizing we're one city across all these boundaries, whether they're socioeconomic, geographic, political, cultural.